Hello, my name's Mr. Mayhew. I'm the head of history at Ormiston Victory Academy, and I just want to tell you about some of the things that your children, your pupils, will be looking at in Year 8 history lessons. So, the start of the year starts off with us looking at the Victorian Age and the Industrial Age. Now, traditionally, people have looked at Britain in kind of isolation, but what we've tried to do is look at Britain in the context of the world and the British Empire, looking at the impact that Britain had on the world and looking at the positive and the negative aspects of it. One of the key things that we want is to develop our pupils into historians who look at all aspects of this and start to think about the different groups within society and how they benefited with this. Okay, now again, this contextual knowledge of this age will help later on, especially if they go on to study GCSE history, as particularly in the crime and punishment unit. If you understand about Victorian society, there's a lot you can build on there. At present, we're looking at the First World War. So when we're looking at the First World War, we look at the causes of the war, the features of the war. We then look at different aspects. And again, we want to try and introduce the idea of it being a world war. While we think of the trenches of the Western Front, the Somme, we need to also consider the impact that the war had on different communities around the world, but similarly move away from just thinking of the First World War as just in Europe. For instance, at the same time as the Battle of the Somme, the Norfolk Regiment were suffering huge catastrophic losses at the Siege of Kut el Amar in the Middle East. So we want to try and get pupils to think about this. We'll then briefly look at the interwar period because we need to think of how does the peace of 1919 very rapidly develop into 1939, the outbreak of a Second World War. And then we will look at the Second World War. And again, I want to try and bring in as much local history to this as possible. So we're all in our classrooms looking at this, but considering it within an international and national context. So again, we'll encourage anyone with any family stories, family histories and stuff to try and share this and build on this. In the final term, we're going to be looking at the Holocaust. Now, we are currently this year part of the of UCL's Holocaust Beacon School program, and so we're working with experts in the field of Holocaust education. We're developing a really new, exciting and challenging scheme of work that really makes pupils think about it, to move beyond the traditional simple images of the train tracks, Auschwitz, the gas chambers, etc. We want them to think about perpetrators, collaborators, all sorts. We then, after that, will start looking at how people have fought for rights in the 20th century, from the suffragettes right through to the modern day. Looking at what is it that normal people, everyday working class people, have done to try and push themselves forward and gain extra rights, whether that's voting rights, whether it's equality, and again, thinking on a national level as well. When we talk about rights, people have often think about Martin Luther King when we're talking about the struggle for civil rights. They think of Rosa Parks, and rightly so. However, in this country, we have also seen the struggle for civil rights, but it's far less known. And we want to try and get pupils to think about the international and the national events that make them think about how have people stood up for their rights. We want to look at the Cold War after this, to look at when was the Cold War hottest, how close did the world come to nuclear devastation. And then the final one, we've moved this one due to a slight bit of disruption this year. We've moved to a thematic study, which will help pupils prepare for GCSE in terms of the idea of looking at a theme across time. And we're looking at migration to Britain throughout time. So we'll be looking at how different groups have come to this country. And again, we're looking at a national level, but also a local level. Norwich, for instance, had the Strangers, the Flemish weavers coming across, who made a massive impact on our city. At one stage, between half and a third of the city population of Norwich were considered the Strangers, who were foreigners who'd moved in. They've had a massive impact on our city, and so we want to think about these sorts of things. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of the history course that Ormiston Victory Academy offers your pupils. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.